guys, so can I tell you something that would probably make some people laugh? I've actually stuffed this plant inside my tennis shoe before. Yep, I'm serious. So I was out walking one day back in my 12,000 steps a day outside. Usually I do it in the summers and stuff. And I realized too late that I hadn't broken my shoes in properly. You know that spot where you can feel that blister coming up before it actually happens? Well, I happened to go on the hunt for some plantain. Found it growing on the side of out in one of the fields where I was walking because I worked on a lot of dirt paths and stuff here. So picked a couple leaves, broke them up a little bit, stuck them in my shoe where it was rubbing, and just kept right on walking. But so now, if somebody had driven by and seen me stuffing weeds in my shoe, that probably would have been a different YouTube video for them. But they probably thought I lost my mind completely. Like, why is that girl? Does she not have pockets? Why is she shoving things in her shoes? So, unfortunately, the more you learn, this is what herbalism is going to do to you guys, right? You're going to stop seeing weeds and you're going to start seeing possibilities, right? How can I shove this in my shoe? Is one of the questions you're going to maybe ask. So this is fresh plantain that I picked from my yard this morning. And this is the exact same plant after it's been dried, and it lives happily and contently in my apothecary, right? Same plant, different preparations. This one might go in your shoe. This one's going to live in your cabinet. Now, so today I want to share a little why this little weed has become one of my favorite herbs. When you fresh pick it, it's got a very distinct smell to it. One of the things I love most about this plant is how tough it is, right? Seriously, I'm not lying. This is a resilient little plant. Look at where this thing grows, right? It grows in driveways. It grows in gravel. It grows in walkways, right? Literally, the most trodden down areas in my yard, that's usually where I see this, right? Compacted soil, places where most plants would struggle and say, nope, can't do it. People mow right over this plant all the time, right? Kids run across it. The dog chews on it sometimes, right? It's a very, like I said, resilient plant. And somehow, right, no matter how much abuse this plant continues to take, it just keeps coming back, right? And honestly, I think that's like one of the reasons, right? People have connected with this plant for so long, right? No matter how hard they've tried to kill it, it has outstayed them and been quite resilient, as I said, right? So it reminds me that strength always doesn't have to be loud, right? Sometimes it's just quietly showing up day after day. And I know a lot of us can relate to that, right? We just continue to show up day after day, no matter how much things want to kick us down. So, plantain has a really long history of traditional use. People have worked with it for generations, right? They've made fresh poultices from it. They've infused it into oils. They've turned those oils into salves. They've made teas with it. They've made washes with it, plantain washes, just to wash the skin. And it wasn't some rare herb that only wealthy people had access to, right? A lot of people could get access to this plant, right? It was growing right outside their door. And I love that connection with this plant, with history and people over time. Sometimes I think we spend too much time in life looking for the next amazing herb or the next amazing thing or that unknown secret knowledge. Sometimes it's just the basic stuff that grows in our yard, right? God already placed it here, right here, for you to use under your feet. So why are you going to go looking for Chinese herbs when you have something just nice here that can maybe work, right? So I think that's what makes herbalists continue to come back to plantain, right? But also, right, the reason is the chemistry inside these lovely little leaves, right? Plantain contains allotonin, which has been studied for its role in supporting healthy cell growth and tissue growth. This is why I will use plantain over comfrey internally, right? It contains mucilage, right, which you've probably already heard me mention 6,487 times in some other video. And tannins, right, which you've heard in another video probably too. And that's what I think is fascinating, right? It isn't memorizing names of plants, right? It's realizing this little plant has an incredible amount of strength going beneath the surface, right? And so the more you study herbs, the more amazed by how intelligent they're put together, right? Now, this is where I started to think like an herbalist, right? So if I have fresh plantain, which this leaf looks almost as big as my head, I'm thinking, what can I do with this right now? So historically, one of the simplest preparations, like I said, was a poultice, right? No dehydrators, right? No tinctures, just the basic plant, right? They didn't need any fancy equipment to use this, which I like, right? If you're a prepper, you don't want to think like the fanciest equipment. You just want to know, how can I use this plant? And I love that because it reminds me that herbalism doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes the simplest preparations have been around for the longest. You hear any barking? Our friend Fergus is on cat and goose patrol, trying to keep him to come near the porch while we're videoing. Yeah. Target is not allowed near the porch while we're videoing, per Fergus. Okay, so plantain. Again, once it's dried, everything changes. Now I'm looking at this jar and I'm thinking, should I make a tea? Should we make a tincture? Should I infuse this into oil? I use plantain at different seasons in my lip balms, right? Should I make it into a salve? One thing I've been learning lately, right, which I touched on in another video, is choosing the preparation can be just as important as choosing the herb itself, right? It's one of the reasons why I've enjoyed building my apothecary, right? And during some seasons, I use the fresh, but I'm not going to get the fresh in the winter. And so this is where the dried is beneficial as well, right? One plant, lots of possibilities, right? So people also ask me, is plantain gentle? Generally speaking, yes. Yes, it's gentle. Plantain has a long history of traditional use. Many herbalists consider it to be one of the gentler herbs in Western herbalism. That being said, plants are still biologically active, right? So some people can have allergies or sensitivities to certain plants, right? And if you are pregnant, breastfeeding, taking medications, or have any underlying health conditions, it's always a good idea to talk to your qualified health professional, whoever that might be, before just, downing the hatch on any type of herb, even if it's considered safe. I think a part of respecting plants is also respecting people, right? And everybody is different, and learning those differences can be very important. So, when I first started learning about herbs, I wanted the exotic plants, right? It's the exotic that kind of pulls you into things, right? And it's one of the ones with the really fancy, impressive names, right? And then you start to learn, and your favorite herbs literally become the ones that grow in your front yard that you have easy access. And I think that's kind of funny, right? So like most of us get drawn in for the fancy herbs, and we stay for the ones that are everyday, right? So herbalism can completely change the way you see the world around you. I don't walk through my yard the same anymore. I don't hike the same anymore. I don't drive down the road the same anymore, right? I'm constantly looking around and thinking, I wonder what's growing over there. Probably a tick. This time of year, it's a tick that's growing over there. But you start to wonder what's growing here. And honestly, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that learning and studying these plants has given me, right? They've taught me to slow down, to notice, and to appreciate what God has already placed around me. I don't need to hike the mountains that I don't live around to find the herbs, and I probably just have it already in my yard, right? So next time you're out walking, depending on where you are, because we live in a very big country, right? Before you go pulling any of this stuff up, I want you to take a look at it. It might just become one of your favorite herbs too. And who knows, maybe one day you'll find yourself stuffing plantain leaves in your shoes too. I don't know. Or maybe you didn't know you could do that, and now if you have a blister, you will. I'm just going to warn you, your neighbors are going to officially think that you have lost your mind, or you're the weird herbal lady. I'm always randomly somewhere and asking for access to somebody's backyard to maybe look at stuff. So I'd love to know, guys, did you grow up knowing what plantain was? Did you think it was only in the grocery store? Did you think it was a weed? When did you learn to start respecting it, right? I want you to leave me a comment below of the fun ways you have used this plant. I think it's important for all of us to share our knowledge. None of us are know-it-alls. All of us can learn something from each other. So until next time, guys, I want you to stay rooted, stay curious, and keep growing in grace.